BigCountryPreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, our daily look at an area football team and the key questions we're going to be answering about that team in our August 21st preseason preview here at Big Country Preps. I'm with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom. And tonight, Dan, we are going to be talking about the Breckenridge Buckaroos.
And this is a Breckenridge team that returns 13 of their 25 lettermen from last year, only 4 offensive and 5 defensive starters from last year's 4-6 team. But they'll have call-ups from a really solid 6-4 JV squad. And let's be honest, Coach Pierce has put a pretty tough and gritty product on the field every year he's been there. So I would expect that to be the same. It's going to be an interesting year, I think, for Breckenridge. Obviously, being part of that District 3-3A D1, which I think got even tougher with the addition of Sweetwater this year. It's going to be a challenge, and they're going to have some questions to answer if they hope to get back to the playoffs this year. But I think it's going to be an interesting year for Coach Pierce, and I'm excited to talk about them here in a few minutes.
All right, before we get rolling on tonight's edition of the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, we want to remind you YouTubers to please hit the subscribe button. After that, please hit the little bell so you'll get notifications each and every time that Big Country Preps comes up with a new video. And also, we'd like to thank a couple of our sponsors, beginning with For the Love of the Game Broadcasting and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of KLAX 93.5 FM out of Breckenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is For the Love of the Game Broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a vehicle, give Rob a shout at 254-559-2266. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. That is Rob Durham up at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge.
All right, and with that, let's go ahead and jump in and talk about these Breckenridge Buckaroos and some of the biggest questions they face here in 2024. I think one of the big things that's going to be a big advantage for this team is the return of running back Sawyer Wimberly, a kid who's very, very fast, a state caliber sprinter who's really a playmaker for him. He can run the ball, he can catch the ball, and he's also a big weapon for them in the kicking game. So they're going to have some skill guys around their quarterback, but I think the quarterback is going to be a big question mark. Who is going to be that kid that steps in as the signal caller and kind of leads that offense? Joseph Juneau, a junior, looks like he'll be the favorite for that job, and they've got a sophomore they're pretty excited about as well, and Hudson Woodward. But these are kids, like a lot of the kids that are going to be taking over positions this year for Breckenridge, that haven't necessarily done it on Friday nights before. So I think the big question is going to be, how do these kids respond to that varsity game, to that varsity speed, and then their first crack at it.
And you're touching on Mike. The next question really is how fast can these young juniors and sophomores adapt and adjust to. I mean, especially this new district that they're in is going to be tough. So how quickly can that young group adapt, and can they play well enough to snag a playoff spot? And it's going to be tough in this league. It's the same. It's still District 3-3A, but with some new faces.
Yeah, and that leads me into my next question as well: is can this Breckenridge team get back to the playoffs in what I think again is a tougher district? I mean, when you add a Sweetwater team that was a really solid 4A D2 team and has a lot coming back this year, that's going to be a really tough test. Obviously, Jim Ned has been fantastic the last several years. Clyde had a great year last year. And you're just talking about up and down that district, and you added Comanche as well. So you're talking about a really tough district, basically top to bottom. Even San Angelo TLCA last year was better than they have been. So not a lot of gimmies. And the thing about Breckenridge that we've come to learn under multiple coaches now is they're going to test themselves in non-district. So this is going to be an extremely difficult schedule for Breckenridge. So the question is can they survive that and navigate it in a way that allows them to play an 11th game this year? I think one thing about Breckenridge, I think, has also been the case over the years across multiple different coaches, is this is a team that is often better than its win-loss record might indicate. This is Breckenridge is always a tough out. Even in the games, in the seasons where they haven't won as many games as they've wanted to, they've put a lot of, sent a lot of teams to the brink. I mean, they've pushed a lot of teams to the limit. So I've long been impressed with the way Breckenridge plays, the physicality they play with, and just the toughness and grit they play with. But at the end of the day, it is kind of about winning games, and you want to get into the playoffs. That's the goal of every team starting the season. And that's kind of the question is, can they do that this year in what I think is going to be a really tough district?
All right, now let's take a quick look at Breckenridge's schedule for 2024. We were talking about this young team and how they're going to develop it and get ready for district. Well, I'll tell you what, Casey Pierce has lined up a murderer's row in non-district play. So they're going to be battle tested going into district. Can they stay healthy? Will they retain their confidence after this tough stretch? We shall see. But here it is. Non-district season opener at Holiday. And as we all know, that's a very good holiday program. That's going to be August 30th. September 6th, there'll be a home date against Childress. Childress is good year in and year out. September 13th at Cisco, and that'll be an improved Cisco team. Very young last year, but better numbers this year, and it's never easy to play over at the Graveyard. And then they've got Eastland on the road. That's going to be on September the 20th. That's another team that expects to be better this year. And then a home date with the Toller Rattlers on September the 27th. That's the team that made it all the way to the state title game last year in 2A D1, and they've got a lot of quality players coming back. So that's just and then of course an open date after that before heading into district. That is a monstrous non-district slate. Those young juniors and sophomores are going to be thrown into the fire quickly, and they'll have to mature quickly.
Yeah, and as is often almost always the case, Breckenridge ducks no one. They schedule a brutal non-district schedule every year, and I respect that. I think I mean losses, win-loss record in non-district doesn't matter nearly as much as how prepared you are once you start district. And this is a brutal district schedule as well. They start on October 11th with a home game against Clyde before going to Jim Net on the 18th of October. They then host Comanche on the 25th of October and host Sweetwater the following week on the 1st of November before wrapping up district with what would be on paper their lightest test of the district schedule at San Angelo TLCA on November 8th. But just a really tough schedule, district schedule following a really tough non-district slate. There are not a lot of breaks in this schedule at all. I'm excited to see how Breckenridge navigates this. I think that if they can survive that non-district schedule, I think it's going to be a really fun district race between a lot of teams that expect to make the playoffs and only four of which can. So it's going to be an interesting race.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch, actually. All right, game of the year with each one of the teams that we cover. We like to pick their game of the year, that being just the most important game that they really need to win of the season. And the way I see it for Breckenridge, I'll go first this time. I
Okay.
think that game against Comanche on October 25th is very important. That might be for the 4 seed. It could very well be, but we shall see. But it's at home for Breckenridge, which is in their favor. It's never easy to beat the Buckaroos there in Buckaroo Stadium.
Yeah, that was my top pick. I think that to me was the one that kind of jumped out as the one that you almost have to win if you want to make the playoffs out of this district. But I think that district opener at home against Clyde is going to be an interesting one as well. Clyde has a new coach. Obviously, Blake Carr, who is so good at the quarterback position, has graduated. So they have some questions there as well. I think that'll be an interesting one just to see kind of what to expect from both of those teams going forward, because the winner of that game, I think, is going to have a pretty good path to at least the number 4 seed in the playoffs, maybe higher than that. So but yeah, the Comanche game's the one that on paper kind of jumped out at me, but I think that Clyde one in the district opener is going to be fun as well.
Yeah. Well, assuming that everybody in the league is going to be a favorite over TLCA, Breckenridge included, that winning that Comanche game, then if they win that, they're in the playoffs, and then any win over Clyde, Jim Net, or Sweetwater improves your standing,
Mm.
improves your seed. But that Comanche game, in my opinion, is going to be the one that decides whether or not they see postseason.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but that's going to be a fun district, man. That's always been a fun district. I think with Sweetwater moving down to 3A D1, I think it gets even more interesting. I think that's going to be a wild race.
All right, and with that, it's about time to wrap up this edition of the Countdown to Two-A-Days series, the Breckenridge Buckaroos. But before we do that, we want to remind you that on August 21st, that's the big day here at Big Country Preps. That's when we release our annual preseason football preview here at the website. It's going to have the most comprehensive look at Big Country high school football of any media source, and that also includes a number of teams just on the outside of the Big Country. We have quite a large area to cover. We'll have previews for all of our 11-man teams, and overall look at 6-man. We'll have features for all of our 11-man teams. We'll have opinion pieces, predictions, stats, standings, a ton of photos, lots of video, you name it. We're going to have it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Join us August 21st.
And this year, our preview will be even larger as we're adding 5 new schools to the coverage area. We've got Mineral Wells, Glen Rose, Graham, Toller, and Miles being added to the mix. we are super excited to be covering those this year. We hope y'all are excited to follow our coverage of those schools throughout the school year. In the meantime, thank you for joining us for this episode of our Countdown to Two-A-Days series. And make sure you come back tomorrow when we preview the Clyde Bulldogs here at bigcountrypreps.com.